The legislation that we have developed here in the Congress is bipartisan. It stretches from, I shouldn't say stretches because then I'm not describing the polls here in the Congress, but we have Ted Kennedy, Democrat, Chuck Grassley, Republican, Debbie Stabenow, Democrat, John McCain, Republican, back and forth. Bipartisan support for a piece of legislation we have crafted very carefully that says, why shouldn't the American people be able to take advantage of FDA-approved drugs by re-importing them from another country where that same drug is sold for a fraction of the price? Why shouldn't the global economy work for consumers as well? Bipartisan legislation that has substantial areas of safety built into it, so there's no safety issue here. This is from Dr. David Kessler, who was head of the FDA for 8 years, 1990 to 1997. The Dorgan Snowe bill, Olympia Snowe is the principal co-sponsor along with me, and many others have worked on this, Senator Stabenow and Senator McCain and others for a long time, Senator Kennedy. The Dorgan Snowe bill, quote, provides a sound framework for assuring that imported drugs are safe and effective. Most notably, it provides additional resources to the agency to run such a program. Oversight by the FDA of the chain of custody of imported drugs back to the FDA, inspected plants, a mechanism to review imported drugs to ensure that they meet FDA's approval standards, and the registration and oversight of importers and exporters to ensure that the imported drugs meet these standards and are not counterfeit. Let me just show where our prescription drugs come from. The pharmaceutical industry is engaged in a full-court press with members of this chamber, and they have a fair number of friends in this chamber that would want to help them derail this legislation and continue to be able to charge the highest prices to the American consumer. Lipitor comes from Dublin, Ireland. Nexium comes from France. Of course, these are all imported by the pharmaceutical manufacturer themselves. Any one of these, Vytorin, Singapore, Italy, United Kingdom. Actos comes from Osaka, Japan. All of these are made in other countries, brought back to this country, and by the way, sold in every other country, in most cases for a lower price than when they are sent back to this country by the manufacturer. The legislation that we have introduced is very simple. It just gives the American consumer the opportunity to take advantage of lower prices for an FDA-approved drug. In many cases, by the way, a drug that was created with the very research that the American people paid for through the National Institutes of Health. Some have said, as a result of the pharmaceutical industry's entreaties here, that, well, this can't be done safely. Just can't be done safely. Well, apparently they do it safely. The chain of custody, for example, in Canada is virtually identical, and I have a quote that I don't have here, a quote from Dr. McClellan, former head of FDA, virtually identical chain of custody from Canada as opposed to the U.S. between the pharmaceutical manufacturer, the wholesaler, and the retailer. So is the chain of custody in Canada safe with respect to prescription drugs being sold to Canadian consumers? The answer is yes. And so then why would you not be able to establish a regime just as they have in Europe for many, many years called parallel trading? This is not new. If you're in Europe and you're living in Germany and want to buy a prescription drug from Spain, or if you're in Italy and find a prescription drug priced lower in France, through a parallel trading system, you can easily do that. They have, to my knowledge, we had testimony from one of the people involved in this. To my knowledge, there have been no issues of safety at all. They've done it for 20 years. Are those who oppose this saying, well, the Europeans are smarter than we are, they can do it, but we can't? I don't understand that. That's not the case. This is a very simple case. We propose an amendment that would allow drug reimportation and would make it safe. That's the fact. And we understand that the pharmaceutical industry doesn't like it. That's a fact, too. I understand why they don't like it. Suppose were I running a pharmaceutical company and had the ability to price however I wanted to price inside the United States, one of the most important markets in the world, perhaps the most important market in the world, and I would have no competition from lower prices because I was able to keep that out, I understand why they'd like to keep that deal working for them, but it doesn't work for the American people. It is not fair for the American people, just isn't. And that's why we've put together a bipartisan piece of legislation. The Dorgan Snowe bill, supported by Republicans and Democrats, with I believe now 33 co-sponsors, is one that should pass this Senate. The House has already passed a similar piece of legislation in the last session. I believe finally, given a fair opportunity, and I believe we'll be given that fair opportunity, whether it's on this bill or perhaps with some consent to do it on another bill, I believe we will get this done. This is important. There are some things we do that aren't very important at all. And my criticism, it's a great privilege to serve here, my criticism of this place is from time to time we treat the light way too seriously.
Are participating in the required monthly test of the Chicago Area Emergency Alert System. This system was developed to provide information to the public during emergencies. This is a test.
As they can, that will stand up for their current pricing strategy, and they will find a few. No question about that. There are some members of the Congress who I think like the pricing strategy of saying let's price drugs so that the American people pay the highest prices in the world. But I'm very anxious to get here to the floor to debate them on that subject because they're wrong. It is just wrong. It's wrong to do this to the American people. One final point. I don't disrespect the pharmaceutical industry. I say good for you when you produce a miracle drug, a life-saving drug. But miracle drugs offer no miracles to people that can't afford to buy them. My problem with the pharmaceutical industry is the pricing strategy. The pricing strategy which says to the American people, you pay the highest prices in the world, and there's nothing we will let you do that can alter that. That's wrong. And that's why I and others come to the floor of the United States Senate and say, let's fix this. Not later. Let's fix this now. Mr. President, I yield the floor.